Okay, it is 6:02. We have 32 attendees, and I'd like to start this session. I'm Joe Pato, a member of the Select Board and serving as liaison to the Ad hoc Crematory Study Committee. Tonight, we are hosting a session. This will be a webinar, and we'll have Mike Harris, a member of the committee, uh, run the introduction and then recognize individuals to speak. So, Mike, I'd like to throw this over to you.
Thank you very much, Joe. Thanks to all the members of the Lexington community who have joined us this evening. And I also want to thank the members of the Ad hoc Crematory Study Committee, too, that have helped prepare for this discussion. Just by way of introduction, I am a 20 plus year resident of Lexington. I've raised two daughters through the local school system and have been a participant in the Ad hoc Crematory Study Committee since I think it was last May or June that we first convened. And the purpose of this meeting is to gather input from members of the Lexington community. We want you to share and describe your interest and perspective on the potential for the town of Lexington to build a crematory on the grounds of Westview Cemetery. We've reserved up to 90 minutes this evening to gather your input, as we want to make sure that everyone's perspective is heard. And what I'm going to do is go through a little bit of context, kind of why we're here this evening, and then I'll discuss a bit about sort of framing for how we want to proceed with providing your comments. So first, in terms of context, in November of 2024, a special town meeting passed a resolution that read that the town is urged to research, study, and present a plan to the select board for the potential construction of a crematory addition to the existing Westview Cemetery building to address the unmet end-of-life cremation needs of communities in our town. I am one member of an ad hoc crematory study committee, and we've been working on multiple work streams for many months addressing various aspects of that research study. One of those work streams is to gather community input so that individuals' wishes and concerns are included in the committee's analysis, alongside all the other research that we've been doing on legal, regulatory, financial, environmental, and socio-cultural considerations. We will not be taking time on this call to share all that other information, but it will be all ultimately included along with a summary of the collective input that you all provide this evening in a report that the committee will deliver to the select board over the next coming weeks. So that's why we're here this evening, which is to gather input from all of you as part of the committee's work. If you know of folks who weren't able to attend this evening's meeting but still want to provide input, you can share an email address which is available on the lexingtonma.gov site. It's where you probably found the registration for this very meeting. I'll say it verbally here just so you can perhaps write it down if you want to share it with others, but it's Crematory Study, CMTE, Crematory Study, CMTE, short for committee, at lexingtonma.gov. Again, you can find that on the lexingtonma.gov site, and people can provide input via email if they aren't able to attend this meeting live. Now, let me provide just a little bit of background information, which might be helpful for those of you who are unfamiliar with how cremations work in the state of Massachusetts. Every town in Massachusetts must have a cemetery for the internment of remains. This actually is a statute that dates back to 1855, and it's for public health purposes. Westview Cemetery is Lexington's town-owned and town-run cemetery. If you don't know, it's located right near the intersection of Bedford Street and Hartwell Avenue. Each year from the town of Lexington, approximately 300 residents pass away, and roughly 200 of those are buried at Westview. Of those 200, approximately 200 burials, about half of those are cremated remains and the other half are casket burials. There is a law in Massachusetts that requires that any crematory must be operated on the grounds of a cemetery. Currently, Lexington residents will go to a funeral home like Douglas Funeral Home in Lexington or DeVito Funeral Home in Arlington Heights, and they in turn work with crematories that are located in several towns nearby. Currently, there are crematories at Mount Auburn Cemetery in Cambridge, There's Newton Cemetery and Arboretum, St. Michael's in Boston, Forest Hills in Jamaica Plain, Puritan Lawn in Peabody, and others nearby. The way that a cremation works is to bring the body of the deceased to the facility where it is placed in something that's called a retort. And in the retort, the body is exposed to extremely high heat and is reduced to bone fragments and ash. Those fragments are processed further, and the resulting ashes are ultimately given to the family for saving, scattering, burial, or placement in a funeral niche. What the committee is tasked with is to research and study the potential for construction of a crematory at Westview Cemetery. And as I said earlier, other work is being done on the legal, regulatory, financial, environmental, and sociocultural considerations. The purpose for this call is to gather your input as members of the Lexington community about your perspectives of having a crematory at Westview. So here's how this call will work. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise your hand. You can do so. You can find the button. The raise hand button is in the bottom center of your Zoom screen, and you can click that button. A small dialog box will appear, and then you can then raise your hand. And there, Prashant, thank you very much for being a good exemplar of how to do that. And that's how we get in a queue to make comments. We're going to have a 3-minute time limit on comments, just to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to contribute. And then with any time that's left remaining, I suspect there will be, with any time that's left remaining, if you have additional comments, we'll be happy to circle back around and answer your not answer your questions, but hear your comments with any time remaining. I apologize in advance if I or Joe Pato, who is the select board member, interrupts you if you've gone over the 3 minutes. Again, we want to be respectful of everyone's time and just make sure that everyone has the chance to speak. And again, if you'd rather make a written comment rather than speak on this call, you can, again, use that email address, which I think was entered into the chat, which is crematorystudy@lexingtonma.gov. So with that, I'll open it up for comments. I will call on Prashant first, and for others, please use that raise hand function to get in queue for making comments. And the way that I'd frame the comments is to just please share and describe your interest in this issue. How is this issue relevant to you, and what input would you like to share with the committee? So with that, Prashant, I'll turn it over to you. Please unmute yourself and feel free to make any comments that you'd like. Again, we'll hold you to about 3 minutes, and then the next person will have the opportunity to speak. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Mike. Good evening, everybody. I'm Prashant Dutt, resident at 8 Jean Road in town of Lexington for 27 years now. I never thought I will discuss this topic when I moved to this town. And as I have grown here, I see that many residents go through a tough time locating a nearby crematory. Recently, my close friend's young son passed away. He was in this world helping save others' life, and God had some different path for him. So his father and mother were upset that they had to go to New Hampshire for cremation because nothing was available nearby, when they themselves have been in the town for 32 plus years. Now, there could be various proponents and opponents of the crematory in Lexington. My primary ask is to honor the tradition of one's faith for its long-standing and good citizenry as a basic civic right. There are a lot of expenditure done by town for various communities and various activities, and I will request that town consider this as an important aspect of one's faith to cater to diverse population that the town is representing and is also vouching for. There are a lot of other towns where there are not many residents of faith who want cremation, but they still provide this facility purely on economic basis. So the argument about the expenditure is flat on its face, as a demand is there and the town needs to do due diligence to get going with the approving of the crematory for its resident at the Westview Cemetery. Thank you.
Thank you. Prashant, if I might ask one follow-on point. You said that the family that you mentioned had to go to New Hampshire. And I'm just curious. I know there are facilities that are nearby. The local funeral home,
Yes.
for example, runs the cremation services here out of Massachusetts. Could you just elaborate further on why it was necessary to go to New Hampshire in that case, please?
Yeah. So what happens is nobody knows when you're going to go, right? So when things happen, you desperately look for something, and then they say, oh, they don't have this, or it's busy, or whatever, right? And then you fall back to your friends and they say, oh, this place was available, and you reach out to that, and then you don't consider the distance. But at that point in time, a person who is resident of this town for 32 plus years, who is saving everybody else's life, he's a doctor, right? And his son was a doctor too. So he passed away, unfortunately, at a very young age. But what I'm saying is, like, for so many residents, because as I said at the beginning, when I moved to the town, I never thought that I will die, to be honest, because I was very young at that time, right? So I'm just saying that, it's just like, it's basic right. You know what I'm saying? For a
Understood.
citizen. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your comments. I appreciate it. And you set an excellent example for precisely how we want to run this evening's webinar. So thank you very much for that. I think you're able to remove yourself from raising hand. I think you're able to do that. And if I'm doing this correctly, I think Zubi Singh is the next person up. So Zubi, if you haven't already unmuted yourself, please do, and please make your comments. I see you coming up, so I think there you go. Now you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, I'm Zubi Singh. I've been here for about 27 years, living in Lexington with 2 kids raised here. As I get older, this is something that I've thought a lot of because I've attended a lot of funerals. I'm Indian, but I think it doesn't just apply to Indian, it's South Asians in general. I think they're all looking into different, ways that they deal with this. And it's a growing trend where my understanding is that cremation is something that they're looking at. So Lexington is such a diverse community. And as our community evolves, our municipal infrastructure must also evolve. If we want to meet all the residents' cultural, practical, end-of-life needs. So as I get older, this has become important because when I've attended other funerals and we've had to go to different places, I did not travel to New Hampshire, but I have gone to all the other places, most of the places that you mentioned earlier. Now, end-of-life services have got to be considered critical because we all have to pass. What people choose, it should be up to people. But as that grows, because even in the numbers you stated, of the 200, it was 50-50. These end-of-life services are critical, but they're usually overlooked by the community when they're planning it. So I think we need to pay a lot of attention, and Lexington has now become one of the most diverse global connected towns in Massachusetts. My understanding is that, and before I even go there, the multi-general families that live in Lexington itself has drawn so many other professionals into the schools, employment, quality of life, etc. So what we need to see is, can we address that for our populations, right? And in the example quoted before, he was a younger person, not quite planning, a death at such a young age, but it can happen. So it's a stressful time, and we shouldn't have to go traveling far away to these places. So I think as we grow and we look at Mass's population, Lexington is up there in Massachusetts with such a diverse population. My understanding is that when we look at this Asian population, Lexington itself is about 33.8% Asian, whereas some of the other averages are 7%. So if you look at that one stat alone, it shows that we really need to consider giving this more attention than we have. I can go on, but I'll stop here.
Thank you, Zubi. Appreciate your comments. Just a couple housekeeping items, if I may. One is, if you're trying to unmute yourself, if you look on the lower left corner of your screen, there's something called audio there. That's typically how you would click on that to unmute yourself if that's necessary. And then one other offer, which is I've got several folks with their hands up, which is fantastic. I will get to all of you. What I would ask, if there's anyone who needs to depart for a very quick meeting, or they have to leave right away, I will ask that person, if there is someone who has to leave, in just a few minutes. Basically, I'm trying to offer that people can skip the line if they have to leave early. So if you have to leave very quickly, please unmute yourself and speak. And if not, then I will continue to work down the list in order. So again, if there's someone that needs to leave early, go ahead and unmute yourself and speak.
Mike, the general public can't unmute themselves. I have to enable it. I'm
Okay.
going to lower all hands and only put your hand back up right now if you have a tight deadline.
Okay.
And then we'll go back and ask for everybody.
Excellent. Thank you. Sorry for the challenge there, but thanks for helping us out, Joe. So I see Deepika Sani is raised her hand. So please go ahead. I think Joe can unmute you.
So thank you, Mike and Joe, for organizing this, and really appreciate your letting me jump the line. I appreciate the audience's patience also, but I have to be in Cary Hall, and I wanted to make sure I got my little bit in. I just want to reflect on the fact that on 2018, in just one of the info sessions, the similar kind of event that I have to run now for, I remember Narayan Bhatia ji was there. And for those who do not know him, he was an exemplary town meeting member, an exemplary Indian American leader in town who kind of showed the way as to how we newcomers could show up in town and be volunteers and become a part of the fabric of Lexington through our work, our efforts, our lives. Obviously, we are already a part through our children. And I remember this info session where work was the DPF person was talking about Westview Cemetery improvements, and it had come up as an article. And I remember I actually have a visual memory of Narayanji sort of smilingly saying, as the explanations went off, but we cremate our people. And that, to me, hearing that was actually a physical shock, because I did not realize that as an Indian American, we could ask for things, and we could ask for things which was so important. It seemed that I at least felt that I was still an outsider and I should show up, do the work, but never ask for anything. And here Narayanji was showing us the way. He passed away this past December in the winter. And one of his goals and sort of last sort of efforts was in bringing about this end of life service in Lexington, a parity for all communities. And it seems like many communities are going that route anyway, where they are seeing that cremation is a feasible, economical way to have this last act of grace at the end of life. So I just wanted to remember Narayanji, and I wanted to just reiterate some of the other things said by Zubi and by Prashant, that for a lot of people, going at the end of a long illness or chronic illness is a different way of going. Currently, we have had in the past few years, we've had people go in our community and they've gone, which has been a big shock for the family because it's been a sudden death. That
15
raises
seconds.
Okay, thank you, Joe. I'm just want to repeat that having a facility in town, which we all understand, which we accept in our normal day of life, would be such a blessing. And I think we can do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deepika. Raj Heda, you are next up.
Mike, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for organizing this. My name is Raj Heda. I have been a resident of Lexington for 12 plus years now, and I'm here to request and support the proposal for a crematory facility at the Westview Cemetery, and not just for the Hindu community, but for the broader needs of our town. As a priest, I perform different rituals and also, review the literatures in terms of what it speaks about the cremation. And our tradition speaks about that cremation is just not a preference. However, it is a sacred and time-sensitive rites. The final rituals, which is known as Antyeshti, it represents the return of the body to the five natural elements, which are earth, water, fire, air, and space. And a key part of this ritual includes the presence of family and the performance of specific rites such as Havan, which have a deep meaning for closure and spiritual peace. Any delays or inability to perform these rites properly can create significant emotional and spiritual distress for families. Today, in families in our Lexington area face limited access. Only, in my understanding, there are only a few facilities across Mass and New Hampshire. Also, there are multi-day delays, even in urgent situations, something like this. There are also restrictions that do not allow witnessing or performing essential rituals. And as we all know, right, more so ever during this time, family always like to participate and ensures that the transition of the soul happens peacefully. And now they're in the grieving situation, they also have to navigate logistics, travel, and cultural limitations. Lexington, as we all know, is a home to growing and diverse community, including 7 to 8% residents of Indian origin, along with many others who choose cremation. My learning is that more than 50% of Americans now opt for cremation, making this not just a religious
15
need,
seconds.
but a mainstream community-wide service gap. Definitely, sorry. Right, so this is more of a mainstream community-wide service gap. And providing this facility aligns with Lexington's commitment to equality in public services, dignity in end-of-life care, and serving the evolving needs of its residents. So this is ultimately about compassion, about dignity and access. And I respectfully urge the committee to consider this as an essential service for our community, one that supports families
Time,
during
please.
one of the most important moments of their lives. Again, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Raj. Thank you very much for your comments. Two follow-ons just to offer that 50% figure is accurate. Roughly 50% of Lexington residents, roughly 50% of everyone in America chooses cremation at end of life. And in fact, about 50% of the burials that take place at Westview Cemetery are of cremated remains, not of casket remains. So just a point of information there. I believe... I believe we have Sandeep Patel is next up, if I'm looking at the sequence correctly. Sandeep? You may be muted. Doesn't look like you're muted, but I'm not hearing you. If I don't hear from Sandeep, I'll ask Priya Tanjori. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing any names. But Priya, I believe you're next.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Priya Tanjore, resident of 7 Wyman and also town meeting member, Precinct 7. Today, I'm here to request the town of Lexington to build a crematory on the grounds of Westview Cemetery. Lexington is one of the most diverse towns in Massachusetts, and more than 16% of our residents are Indian, one of the highest proportions in the state. For many Indian families, including Hindu, Sikhs, Jain, and Buddhist households, cremation is just not a preference, it's a central religious rite. It's a time-sensitive, community-oriented, and a deeply sacred ritual. Right now, because Lexington has no crematory, families must travel 40 to 50 miles, often across state lines, to perform these rites. That means long delays, logistical stress, and dozens of cars on the road at a moment when families should be able to gather peacefully and locally. A town that celebrates several festivals with pride should also support its residents at life's most solemn moment with a local crematory that also aligns with Lexington's environmental values. Modern facilities filter emissions effectively and eliminating long distance travel significantly, which reduces the carbon footprint of each service. At its heart, this is about respect, inclusion, and dignity. With such a large Indian population, providing a local crematory is just not practical, it's a meaningful way to honor the cultural and religious needs of the people who call Lexington home. One of the most common wishes near the end of life is having their spiritual and cultural needs respected and to be with their loved ones. Today, the plea in addition to this is to end their journey in a place they call home and love the most. Lexington is a model town and it should support the wishes of approximately 16% of its taxpayers, particularly in that most important moment in their life. Thank you.
Thank you, Priya. Just two follow-on points, if I may. I appreciate that I think you mentioned 16% of residents, and just to reiterate that about 50% actually choose cremation currently. And in terms of the crematories that are available, I know you mentioned that some families may choose to travel 50 miles or so and cross state lines, but there are crematories at Mount Auburn Cemetery in Cambridge, Newton Cemetery in Arboretum, St. Michael's in Boston, Forest Hills in Jamaica Plain, Puritan Lawn in Peabody, and others that are close by in Massachusetts. So those are some that are available. So thank you, Priya.
There are certain restrictions.
I'm sorry?
There are certain restrictions in using some of these facilities today. With respect to witnessing the last rite, and also the usage of fire, lighting the lamp, as well as the corpse itself. So there are certain restrictions, and I hope this facility would actually take into account all those things and meet the needs of the citizens.
Absolutely, and I won't go into much detail, but I have spoken with some of those facilities directly, and I know that they specifically accommodate those wishes. So, but your point's well taken, and that's something that we'll consider in our ultimate report. Someone was queued up and they just dropped off, so thank you, Priya. Let me ask for Umesh Dekane. Again, apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name.
Hi, good evening. This is Umesh Dekne. I'm a long-time resident from the Shade Street, and I assume I'm audible. Am I?
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm long-time resident of the Lexington Shade Street, and I would like to just share my personal experience. And everyone is not actually ready for this kind of the things happens to you. But the people, when they pass away for various reasons, maybe the illness or old age or some parts, in a part of their corner, they already know, okay, someone is passing away. But in my case itself, one of my youngest daughter, she passed away at the daycare, and it was like a bit of, I took it to the leg, and then from there it went to the children's hospital in Boston itself. And it was kind of maybe baby shaken syndrome. And then at the time, it was really shock to me and everyone around us itself. So there were things where, and she passed away during that phase itself. So not being part of by knowing all these parts, and when I was going through that experience itself, I was really shocked and that speechless, and then my mind was not really working at the time itself. So we relied on the people who are around me to help us go through it. So somebody, and this was kind of a bit all of a sudden, so even my friends, younger age, they didn't know what to do itself. So we asked around and somebody said, okay, go to the Worcester. So think about this. So we moved all the way from here to the Worcester, and then there. It was not, even the selected one itself was not, what I'll say is, sufficient enough for all of us itself. So having a grieving of losing the daughter and not able to perform all the rituals, it added a lot more stress and a lot more frustrations and a lot more sadness. So what I suggest for all of you is, if this facility, if it is available nearby, at least it can lessen the pain for people who are going through it. And it will really help us, all of us, even though we don't want to think about passing away or going away itself. So I really strongly recommend, maybe, I suggest maybe no one should go through that those kind of the tragedies. But then if when it goes, at least the pain will be lesser. And being in Lexington really, I think it will be, it would have saved me a lot more grief. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramesh. And I'm sorry to hear that story. I believe the next person with their hand up is Dawn McKenna. Dawn, if you can unmute yourself, please go ahead. There you go.
Dawn McKenna. I'm a Precinct 6 town meeting member. Thank you so much. I want to say that I've lived in Lexington for 62 years. I'm very sympathetic to different religions and their rituals, and how people honor death is different from person to person. I will say my own personal experience is that I've had multiple family members who have died of all ages, and a number of them were cremated. We have always gone to Mount Auburn Cemetery, which is just 7 miles away, and have never had an issue getting in when we needed to. I am also someone who does not want to wait days and days. So, I think that is hard, but there are other, considerations. And to me, one of the big considerations is whether this is a service that we should be providing by the town, or whether it's better served in a private facility. And I think as a town meeting member, I listened to all the conversations the last time that this came up. One of the things that struck me was when you talked about the numbers with the 300 funerals and about 150 of them being cremated. That number has not really changed in the years. So to the comment about them growing and growing doesn't really seem to be the reality. And I do think, unfortunately, we have to consider seriously that we are in a difficult economic time now. We've just approved a huge high school project, and the cost benefit analysis is really important to this, because we're talking about something that's going to serve about 150 people if all of them chose to came to Lexington. And as I said, in our family situation, we always go to Mount Auburn. And they've recently, in the last several years, might be a little longer than I'm remembering, but built a newer facility to accommodate some of these different cultural issues. So I suggest that this is not someplace that the town should go right now, but I will keep an open mind when I see what the report shows. I would just ask also if you could just give us the total number of people who are on this call that are not part of the crematory committee, just so that we know who's here. Thank you.
And Dawn, just 2 follow-up points. One is with respect to the Mount Auburn facility. They went through a major renovation. I believe it was 2018. And they now have a facility which can accommodate about 70 mourners near the retort, in a smaller area for the immediate family. So to your point, they did have a renovation fairly recently. And you asked for total numbers. There are roughly 60 people on this call at this time. And I think there are seven committee members, not all of whom are on the call at this point. I believe the next person up is Sudhir Jain. Sudhir, please take yourself off of mute. And by the way, just a comment while we're waiting for Sudhir to come off mute, Sandeep Patel, yes, I see your hand raised. You're a few people down, so we'll get to you shortly. So please hang on.
Yes.
Sudhir Jain, please.
Yes. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Sudhir Jain. I have been a resident of Lexington for the past 10 years, and I serve as a town meeting member from Precinct 3. I would like to share a few thoughts for our collective consideration on an issue that affects our community and our future. Lexington has always been a community that balances history with progress. We value tradition, education, and thoughtful civic participation. As our town grows, we must also think carefully about how we use our limited land and resources while respecting the diversity of our residents. One such issue is how we approach end-of-life practices, specifically burial versus cremation. Traditionally, burial has been the norm. However, cremation, along with newer, greener alternatives, offers a dignified, practical, and environmentally responsible option for many families in our town. First one, land use. Lexington is a small and historic town where land is precious. Cemeteries require permanent space and ongoing maintenance. Cremation, by contrast, specifically reduces land use. Families can choose small memorial spaces or other meaningful options, helping preserve land for future generations. Secondly, environmental responsibility. Many of us take pride in Lexington's commitment to sustainability. Traditional burials often involve embalming chemicals, cascades, and walls that impact the environment. While cremation also has some impact, newer methods such as green cremation and eco-friendly memorial options offer more sustainable alternatives. Third, cost and equity. Funeral expenses can be a burden for many families. Cremation is generally more affordable, ensuring that all residents, regardless of financial background, have access to dignified end of life choices. Fourth, culturally inclusivity. Lexington is enriched by diverse communities. For many, including Hindu, Buddhist, Jain, Sikhs, and others, cremation is a preferred practice. At the same time, we fully respect those who choose burial. This is not about replacing tradition, but about expanding choices for everyone.
2 seconds.
Finally, civic responsibility. As a resident, we benefit from our town's services and resources. It is important that we all participate in thoughtful discussions about issues that affect our community's future. Encouraging cremation and environmentally responsible opinions is not about change for its own sake. It is about planning wisely, respecting diversity, and using our resources responsibly.
Time, please.
In,
Thank
conclu-
you.
in conclusion, Lexington has always been a leader in thoughtful decision making. By considering cremation as part of our community's future, we honor both our traditions and responsibility to future generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sudhir. I appreciate that. A couple comments. One is in response to you, Sudhir, just a point of fact, which is roughly half of all the burials that currently take place at Westview are in fact cremated remains. So to your point of environmental preservation and less land use and so forth, that is one aspect to consider, or one aspect that's happening today. Sanjay Padaki, I'll ask you to speak next. And before you do, I know you're queued up. Judith Glickson, I will read your comments later. I'm going to get the live people first. And Sanjay, you just disappeared off the queue, so hopefully you'll come back on. And then Judith, I'll read yours later if that's okay. So sorry, there you are. Please go ahead, Sanjay.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
I can, yes, go ahead.
All right. My name is Sanjay Padaki. I'm a resident of Lexington at 46 Ward Street for about 21 years. And I was the liaison to the first ad hoc crematory study committee from the appropriation committee. And I was also one of the co-authors of the petition or the motion that was passed by town meeting a couple of years ago on this topic. I'm not going to rehash some of the other comments that people have made, but I wanted to maybe shed some light on some specific practices that are not able to be met by the crematory facilities in the Massachusetts area. And that's why you see a lot of the Indian families, not only in Lexington, but in surrounding towns, having to travel to New Hampshire in order to do the last rites. So the couple of things that are particularly important is that there is a timing issue. Ideally, the cremation should occur as soon as possible within 24 hours of a person passing away. that usually does not happen due to state law, because I think there's a 24-hour period that people have to wait by law. And so when I talk to the priests in the Indian community, one of the things that they try to do is try to do this as soon as possible after the 24-hour waiting period. And many times these facilities like Mount Auburn or the other ones that you're talking about cannot accommodate that timing. And there's a lot, and because the law states that we have to have crematory facilities in conjunction with the cemetery, that restriction, there's not that many private places you can go to. That's why people end up going to New Hampshire. Also, there are certain rites that have to be done right before the ignition of the body, and there's a 5-minute timeline that has to happen. And if the assembly facility is far away from the actual retort, there is a timing issue that doesn't work, with the priest having to, hustle from one end to the other in order to get this done. So this is coming directly from the Hindu priests. So I wanted to make sure that the committee considers this. And to an earlier comment about a cost-benefit analysis, our town invests a lot of money in many aspects, and this is one of the things that we should be considering, not just doing a cost-benefit analysis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sanjay. Appreciate your comments. Let me go next to Janet Kern, if I may.
Mike, just before I unblock Janet, for anybody who has comments that are longer than 3 minutes, please be sure to send it to us via email. Right, and now I'm finding Janet Kern.
There she is. There you go, Janet. I believe you are on mute.
Good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. Good evening. My name is Janet Kern. I live at 72 Lowell Street, and I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 1. As a town meeting member, I voted for the resolution and supported the town studying and researching the feasibility of construction of a crematorium at Westview. And so I'm grateful for this committee's work, including offering this listening session for the public. Tonight, I am not advocating to build or not build a crematory. Instead, I'm advocating for a continuing process that helps to quantify both the need and the costs for such a facility in ways that will help me as a town meeting member potentially vote on this issue. Because cremation is simply a choice for me, according to my religion, there's a lot I don't know regarding specific requirements and how much unmet need there actually is. And so I asked that one of the next steps beyond this committee's report would be for the town to have an independent needs assessment done. I think it's really important so that we can, as a community, understand what the needs are and to what level they are or aren't met, especially for the population for whom cremation is a requirement according to their religious beliefs. For me, as I said, the option is it's an option for me, cremation. But as an environmentalist, I've become much more aware and much more likely to choose the option for a green burial. And I believe that in and of itself, more people may be choosing green burials. And so cremation isn't actually considered the most environmentally friendly option. So in addition to understanding the needs in the community, I'm also hoping that we can understand the costs and really understand the environmental impact. And again, quantify that, not just kind of anecdotally give that information. I need to understand it in context. For example, the little research that I was able to do on crematoriums, I was discouraged to learn that the cremation process converts vaporized mercury from dental fillings to an even more toxic form of mercury that's released into the environment. And the cremation process also releases PFAS, which are known as forever chemicals from implanted medical devices. Again, it's really hard to know how much of an impact this is, but I would really like to understand that better because mercury and PFAS are invisible. And so
15
they're
seconds.
easy for people to dismiss. So thank you very much. My sincere hope is that we can find a way to objectively quantify the need and evaluate that need alongside potential costs, including the very real environmental impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. And just as a follow-up, there are separate work streams that absolutely look at the cost and environmental factors as well as the quantifying the need. This purpose for this session is to get exactly what we're getting, which is input from the community in terms of what needs are or are not being met. So thank you to all who have contributed so far. Let me ask for Valerie Overton, please. I believe you are next in queue. Please unmute yourself and provide your comments.
Hi, thank you. I'm Valerie Overton. I'm a longtime Lexington resident and Precinct 1 town meeting member. I'm here to support the establishment of a crematory in Lexington at Westview Cemetery for several reasons. I view this as an equity in community service issue. It's also a personal issue for me, and I believe it would also benefit the town in multiple ways. So as you and others have indicated, roughly 50% of Lexington residents and people in Massachusetts and nationwide choose cremation for a whole variety of religious, social, cultural, economic, environmental, and other reasons. And to me, to offering a crematory service is an issue of equity and service for our community. I would like to also speak to the issue of the other crematories that are available in Massachusetts. In my family, we choose cremation. And in my personal experience in other areas, even I have, upon the death of family members, I've received a list of crematories. And what I have found is that, it is very hit or miss whether a crematory is going to have the availability at the moment in time that you need for the death of a loved one. And that is one of the reasons, as others have explained, why people here in Lexington have had to travel significant distances to have a loved one cremated. I think that there is sufficient demand in Lexington and also surrounding communities that we would draw to Lexington for that service, were we to provide a crematory service that is to bring equity to our community. As I said, my family chooses cremation, and when my time comes, I want it to be as easy and least stressful as possible for my son and loved ones to be able to cremate me. I am also interested in the environmental benefits of cremation, and particularly green
15 seconds.
cremation. And I urge the committee to very clearly and explicitly and equitably lay out all of the information so that town meeting members like me can weigh all of the advantages and costs of a crematory to see what resonates for us in terms of our decision making in bringing equity and service and satisfying the needs of our community members. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Valerie, for your comments. Sandeep Patel, you've been waiting patiently. Thank you. Please unmute yourself and provide your comments.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Joe. I have a longer note that I'll send to you, Joe. I want to first address, somebody mentioned the emissions. I didn't want to talk much on it, but I just want to be clear, and I'm sure committee would go into through other streams go into detail of it, but the modern cremation facilities have filters so that mercury and sulfur dioxide do not pass through the process. Just to keep my comments brief, I'm just going to touch on two last rites for ceremonies for two of my elders. When my uncle passed away while we lived in Scarsdale, New York, we were able to his last rites just 5 minutes from home. It was peaceful, accessible, and truly communal. Friends and family from many backgrounds gathered and participated. For us, uh, passing away ceremony is not a sad ceremony. We get together with families and celebrate the life. When my father-in-law passed away after we moved to Lexington, and his wasn't a sudden death, he was in hospice for a while. So unlike some of the other comments, uh, somebody said that chronic conditions are different. He had a chronic condition, so we had time to plan, but we still had to travel 50 plus miles to New Hampshire because local options were not available. Mount Auburn was not available for the reasons that Raj Heda outlined and some of the other people outlined. So that meant that we had to drive dozens of cars, uh, do long round trips, and instead of a calm local gathering, our experience was marked by stress, logistics, and distance. I'm on Hancock Street, a few houses away from Don McKenna, and I'm just curious when 50% of the people are getting cremated, right? Nobody's asking, our neighboring towns have burial grounds. So nobody's saying don't have a burial ground in Lexington. So why are we raising this question? Establishing a local crematory facility is practical. It's a compassionate step. It aligns with how people are already choosing to honor their loved ones. It reduces environmental impact, and more importantly, it allows families to grieve and remember the community they call home. Thanks.
Thank you. Sandeep, if I might ask one follow-on question for you. You said that the facilities in Mount Auburn did not meet the needs for your family member who passed. Could you just explain what was not available at that facility,
Yeah.
please?
So we had about a week, and in a week you start calling people, and they just didn't have availability, and they also as some have mentioned, they at that point they didn't allow. I think they do allow lighting of lamp, and we do what we call a havan. In my father-in-law's case, we were not going to do a havan, but sometimes the cemeteries just see a Hindu person and assume that they're going to do a havan, which is kind of which can trigger a fire alarm, Mike.
Hmm.
And so I mean, I don't exactly remember the details, but we did have about a week to plan. We called, uh, and we had to go 50 miles away.
Okay. Thank you for explaining. Thank you very much for your comments, Sandeep. I appreciate it. Umesh, you are next up. You're unmuted. Please provide your comments.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Joe. Mike, several times you've asked the question, why can't this be done in local towns? They have crematories, they have facilities, they have funeral homes, and a number of callers have sort of answered that. But let me try to pull it together. And this is the singular. This is an important issue. There's a timing element to the religious ceremony that is extremely significant in this end of life process, and that it cannot be met at these facilities that you described. Largely, and because where the body is viewed and when the body is cremated, it has to happen within a certain period of time, and certain steps and procedures have to be followed. It's a timing issue, and that timing issue is absolutely critical.
And my
And that's
understanding,
why.
Mesh, is is it 24 hours? Is my understanding correct?
No. It's not the 20. That the 24 hours is from the time that a person dies to the time that the cremation ceremony begins. But as somebody has said, that that's not allowed in Massachusetts. So we have to relax that for legal reasons. I understand that. What I'm referring to is the time, the ceremony that occurs after the person has died. After the 24-hour period, there is a series of steps that must be followed in a timely way. And that's a matter of, from approximately 5 minutes to 30 minutes or so. There are certain steps that cannot be followed in these facilities that you're referring to in Massachusetts. They can be followed in the facility that everyone is referring to in New Hampshire, which is 50 miles away. And another part of this is that certain members of the family must be there to follow these religious steps. It's number one. Number two, as others have also mentioned, I'll try to pull it together. The economic and environmental cases are strong in the sense that these are far more efficient, far more environmentally friendly. I won't go into those work processes, others can do that. Third, and most important, beyond all of these, is an issue of equity. Hindus, Sikhs, Jains have a right to end-of-life processes just like Jews and Christians and other members of society do. So we have to ask ourselves in Lexington, are we an equitable community or are we not?
8 seconds.
Are we going to practice equitable practices in actions as well as words, or are we not? Let's decide. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Umesh. Jay Flynn, I believe you are next in queue. So please unmute yourself. You may have just muted yourself. There you go.
Good evening. Thank you. My
evening.
name is Jay Flynn. I was a member of the first Crematory Study Committee. We did a lot of work. We had over 12 members of the committee. We reached out to the faith councils. We held public hearings. We had much discussions and economic analysis as we could, and came to our unanimous decision about the determination for crematory at that time. My point is that, and I kind of direct this to you, Mike, is that in stating the charter for the second crematory, the fundamental basis, I think, is to try to understand what might have changed to affect the conclusions we came to the first time. And many of the discussions I hear tonight, I'll greatly appreciate it, and having open forums is wonderful, but we discussed all of that. So I'm concerned that in stating your charter, Mike, for the second crematory, that it should be based on changes from the first committee. And I didn't really hear that from your in the introductory remarks. And I think it's most critical because there's many issues here to be done. My second point is kind of most critical. All the many issues we might have in terms of whether we can actually build a crematory started with, and it was the basic conclusion of the first crematory committee, that it was just not, as an ongoing business, it was just not economically feasible. And the core part of that is that with great appreciation and respect for the faith groups that want a viewing of the cremation, it's just too small a group to make it viable to have a crematory that would have to operate on a 24/7 basis. There's great respect for what they're doing, but that was the core to it. And again, to you, Mike, in terms of quoting statistics, I just would caution greatly that it's not a question of how many cremations the number of cremations is actually growing and the need is actually growing. But to understand the number of cremations requiring a viewing especially if it's from members of Lexington that want to do that. That is a very much smaller group. And so be cautious,
10
please.
seconds.
Be cautious, please, in terms of when we're quoting statistics of the need for crematory. We distinguish between those that will, because of their faith, want a viewing versus those that typically do let the funeral home handle the cremation. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Jay. Judith Glickson, you're up next. And I'm a little confused. If you'd like to speak live, please do. And if not, I'm able to read your comments if you prefer.
I would like to speak live.
Please do.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Judith Glickson. I've lived in Lexington for 16 years. I'm at 2 Ariel Street in Precinct 2. I've learned so much this evening already. I did not realize the importance of cremation to the Indian American population and really appreciate learning about it. And I support supporting that. I have a burial plot at Westview Cemetery, and I hope to have a green burial there. I am a Reformed Jew and do not follow kosher laws, but my understanding is that the more religious Jews do not engage in the process of cremation. My parents are buried in Lexington, Kentucky. My father's body was in a simple casket. My mother's body, since she had donated her body to medicine, it was cremated after the hospital was done using it, and her ashes were buried next to my father's body. I'm comfortable with either of those processes. My only worry is, and I'll probably would love to hear an answer to this question, where would the crematory be located on the property? I would support its being built, especially for the equitability, and also saving, land use, but only if it really fits into our budget. However, if the crematory was built close to and within view of the grassy treed land associated with the burial area, I probably would sell my plot because of the potential air and noise and visual pollution, but also sadly because I associate crematoria with the horrors of the Holocaust and would hate to think that I'm lying there and people looking at me would also, looking at my grave site, would also be seeing burning bodies, smoke coming up. So that's my concern. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Judith. I appreciate that. Elaine, I believe you are next. If you'd care to unmute yourself and provide your comments, please.
Hi. First, I just want to share how wonderful it is, Mike, for you to have such a respectful approach to all of this. So thank you for that. I don't want to repeat everybody's comments, but I am very happy that somebody brought up the concept of green burials. I always thought that I wanted to have to be cremated. I too am Jewish, and although it's not customary in our tradition, there are more and more people now turning to cremation. And I always thought my kids could scatter my ashes in some of my favorite spots in nature. But now that I know about green burials, I feel that it has less pollution. You can have a beautiful ceremony where family members and friends actually create a wonderful blanket out of elements of nature to cover and protect and hold the person like a quilt, like a loving quilt. You can have a ceremony, and when there is no wooden casket, it takes about 3 or 4 weeks for everything to decompose. What upsets me about Lexington's green burial rules is that you have to be in a wooden casket. And I haven't seen the casket that they recommend. Hopefully it is thin and simple, but it probably still takes a couple of years to decompose. So I would love to see, we all, I highly respect the traditions of other people. And I know that I have morphed in my concepts of what I would like within my religious tradition. And to me, a green burial is so much more beautiful. And so I would hope that other cultures could also think about the impact of on the environment of the burning and all the mercury and nitrogen oxide and sulfur dioxide and
15
CO2.
seconds.
And I really hope that Lexington will promote green burials rather than an expensive crematorium.
Thank you for your comments, Elaine. That's your walk-off music.
That's good.
But thank you very much for your input. I appreciate that. Vignesh, you are next, and then Archana Singhal is on deck. So Vignesh, if you can unmute yourself. Again, apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name, but please go ahead and unmute yourself and provide your comments. There you go.
Hi, so my name is Vignesh Krishnan. I am a resident of Lexington. I stay at 7 Pfeiffer Lane. I think Lexington is a community, is a diverse community and prides itself in supporting all its community members from different backgrounds and different religious backgrounds. For Hindus and people of dharmic faiths, cremation is like a sacred obligation and it's not optional. So there are specific practices that you have heard from other members as well. So I won't go into those details. That must be done on time. And I was sort of surprised to know when I talked to other members of the community that they had to travel and manage logistics at this sort of time when they're really vulnerable. And I was wondering that it would be important for the community, not just the dharmic community as a whole, but seems like given that cremation is a thing that many other communities are also adopting, to have a facility in Lexington itself to avoid these kind of problems at a time when everyone's facing a vulnerable situation. With that, yeah, that's mainly what I wanted to say for today.
Excellent. Thank you, Vignesh. I appreciate your input. Archana Singhal, you're next. And then, sorry, it says G-Alex Partners Boston. You are on deck. So, Archana, you are up.
Oh, hi. This is Archana Singhal. I have been living in Lexington for past 30 years. I'm a founding member and a president of Indian Americans of Lexington, and I have been serving this community, past 30 years. I have to tell you, I heard a lot of, information that was provided to everyone. Rather than, looking at the things at a very narrow level that only 150 and 200 people, I think, that point, we need to basically make sure that we look at overall needs for the cremation. So if so many more people want to cremate, I think, that number is not valid, Second thing for Indian community, and I have attended many funeral. Many cremations, it is an emotional thing. It is very time sensitive, and that is a point in time, when people are so vulnerable. And you have to understand that not everybody has relatives in the town or everybody has a lot of extended family. So to be so vulnerable at the time in their life where they might not have that many resources, and to go so far for this process, it is very heartbreaking. And so I will really urge you, that to re-look into it and do move forward, for providing this facility in the town of Lexington. And as far as the Mount Auburn is concerned, it does not permit Havan, which is basically critical. And the time-wise, because of the time-sensitive thing, and that many people talked about it, So it's not a viable options for most part. So please, take a look at, how important it is. And when we are in the town of Lexington, we always talk about equity. So for us, it's not an option, right? So when we are working on so many aspects of equity in the town, we should definitely consider this is the most important part of the equity that we need to give it to our Indian community, and not only Indian community but everyone who is choosing this option, and more people are choosing this option. So I from on behalf of Indian community, I definitely would like to encourage you and request you to consider and vote in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Archana. Two follow-on comments. One is there is no vote occurring. The purpose is just to gather input, which will go into a report, which the committee will provide to the select board. So just so you understand where this is in the process. And secondly, just a point of fact on the volumes, the total number of deaths in the town of Lexington for the entire town is about 300 per year. And that number of 150, 200 reflects the number of people that are interred at Westview Cemetery and the proportion that would be of those which are cremated remains. So just a point of fact.
No, understood. But you have to understand that your opinion and your suggestions basically plays a role also how this thing is perceived. So I am counting on many of the team committee members to basically give you positive feedback, to the town so that they can vote on it.
Fair enough. Thank you for that input. G Alex Partners, forgive me because you might have a different name, but that's how it's showing up on my queue. You're up, please.
Yeah, so my apologies for the name tag. That was my office tag. This is the Chabra family at 7 Forest Street, Lexington. I wanted to leave three thoughts. One is I wanted to react to the point that was made where I believe a respected town member, I think the words were reconsider, whether or not, the cremations should be replaced or by green burials. I wanted to request that in the Hindu dharmic religions, we're talking about millions of years of culture. And just as we would not, suggest that any other great culture that exists in our town would reconsider their thousands of years of structural beliefs, that should not be an ask made of our culture. The second one, there was also a comment made about, the business viability. I forget the exact words, but would a crematorium be a viable business? I would offer to the person that made that comment as well as to others that in matters of life and death, in matters of births and sickness, we don't ask ourselves whether or not special needs, children in our community is a viable business, proposition for our schools, or does it pay for itself? That would be an unfair ask. This is in the same vein. This is in the matter of God, life, and death, and hence the notion of this being considered as a business or brought up as a discussion point. I would request reconsideration of that kind of a talk track. So the third one and last is, look, the big idea here is this is about nuance. And the nuance is less about the mathematics of is Mount Auburn open? If Mount Auburn is open at 2:30 p.m. till 2:30 p.m. on Saturday, if a death occurs at 11 a.m. on Saturday, come on, guys, you've got 3.5 hours to get there. And then you've got a 24-hour waiting period from the death. And that's, it's a Sunday morning and it might be closed. But you can get there on Monday, no big deal. I would offer that this is less of a mathematical, how many miles, and this is about nuance, and nuance is deep, nuance is sophisticated, and nuance, sometimes cannot be expressed by math, and it has to be understood deeply and spiritually and internally. With that, I'll cede the floor.
Excellent. Thank you for your input. Mahesh Kulkarni, you're up, and then Madhu, you are on deck after Mahesh speaks. So go ahead and unmute yourself, Mahesh. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, hi. First of all, thanks for the opportunity. I'm not going to talk about culture, compassion, and other things. I was carefully listening to all the comments, and I did hear a lot of comments about green as well as environment. And I'm also an environmentalist. I do care about the environment, but at the same time, and obviously, when this debate was scheduled, I was already thinking about green and environment, and it is so ironic that today is actually a day when we have the largest gas field in the world that's burning, which is pretty ironic. But that's besides the point. What I wanted to say is that I think we're talking about 2026. If we are having this debate like 50 years ago, that I would have been concerned about, environment and green. But in 2026, the systems are modern, they're regulated, and I'm very sure that there is a safe system that is available which can allow for this cremation in a safe, regulated, and environmentally friendly way. So, just because it's 2026 and I believe that there are options available, I do support having this crematory in town. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mahesh, for your comments. Madhu, please unmute yourself and you can provide comments. And Niran, you are on deck.
My name, by the way, is not Madhu. I just logged in on my wife's computer.
Okay,
So
apologies.
my name came out as Madhu. My name is Shashank Nene. I've lived in Lexington for more than 30 years. I started out making a sort of prepared statement, so it'd be within that 3 minutes kind of thing. I heard a lot of things that I'd listed out already being said, so I'm going to avoid that. I'm going to try to keep it short, sweet, and to the point, saying that, why are we having this discussion is because perhaps people don't understand, what is important to different cultures. Everybody has a tendency to only look at things from their own perspective, and what is outside their realm of experience is somehow difficult to understand. Perhaps the closest community in terms of belief systems and so on, and rites and rituals that Hindus have, is perhaps the Jewish community. And Jewish community often doesn't realize that, and the Hindus don't realize that we're so close to the Jewish community. I have a very close friend, and we tend to be at each other's festivals, and we were amazed at how many things are so similar. While I was born in India, I left India as a child in elementary school, traveled to and lived in many different countries. I've experienced many different cultures from an immersive sort of perspective. And as a result, although my training and day job is in math, computer science, corporate management, my interests and passions have always been with cultures, belief systems, inclusiveness, the celebration of diversity and unity. I've lived in this town for so long, and I appreciate that we all talk about, being so accepting, inclusive, and encouraging diversity. So let me talk about, the Hindu Vedas, like the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, both support inclusiveness. Key principles including caring for strangers, tolerance, diversity, recognizing shared humanity of all people, embracing the inclusions of diverse individuals within the community, and even while maintaining particular religious traditions. That's what the Bible says. And that's exactly what the Hindu scriptures say as well. Examples of this are everywhere in the Hindu scriptures, and are also very prevalent in the Bible. For example, Leviticus chapter 19, verses 33, 34, or Numbers 12, where Moses married a Cushite woman and she was included as part of the community. The inclusion of Rahab and Ruth into the Israelite community. Isaiah 56 preaches universalism, concept of Mashane Habriot is all about valuing differences in people and their beliefs. And this is all I think people are accept saying that, we have 16 different sort of milestone in a person's life in Hinduism. They start from before the
15
birth
seconds.
to the time of death. And the death sort of rituals are key and very important, very emotional. And I think that we should take time to understand what the needs are and to accommodate people. That's it.
Thank you for your input. I appreciate that. We've got one more person with their hand up. Abi, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, you have the floor. And then we'll just ask if there are any last comments before we close the session. So Abi, please go ahead.
Thanks. So my name is Abhijit Bapat. I'm a resident of 11 Marshall Road here in Lexington. So thank you for the opportunity to speak, Mike. I had no original intent to speak at this forum, but I heard with great interest earlier speakers, including those who eloquently supported the proposal to create a crematorium in Lexington. So I clearly support this proposal in the spirit of inclusivity and through honoring and respecting cultures. So I was just reminded of a story that I wanted to share here, and hopefully that gives us an opportunity to appreciate and reflect on the centrality of cremation as part of the final rite processes in dharmic faiths. Most of these rooted in Hinduism. There could be Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism. So recently, a few years ago, a Vietnamese monk, Thich Nhat Hanh, passed away after extensive work in Europe and the US, and of course Asia, his roots being in Vietnam. And he was a colleague, a friend, and a positive influence on Reverend Martin Luther King and part of the civil rights movement. His end of care, towards the end, he had a stroke and he decided to move back to Vietnam and passed away in the monastery in which he was ordained. So I had an opportunity to dial in and participate virtually in his final rites. What I discovered there was the fire that was used to light his funeral pyre was also the fire that was used to light the funeral pyre of the Buddha himself. And it made me think, and I still reflect on this, that this fire that was used for the final rites of the Buddha has been kept alive for 2,500 plus years. And that is how central cremation is to these cultures that emanate from South Asia. So that's the only fact I wanted to place before this August body, and was hoping that this would give us a chance to appreciate and reflect on some of this. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, Mike.
Thank you very much for that contribution. I greatly appreciate it. I see Niran has their hand up, and then, so just Niran, go ahead, please.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Yeah. Hi, Niranjan Ganesdasan. I've been a resident in Lexington for 22 years. First, I wanted to thank everyone that spoke, and especially Michael and Joe for the sensitivity shown here. I've learned a lot. I wanted to keep my remarks just to the effect of what I've learned about Westview and as an option. And you've heard a lot about the reasons for the importance of a crematory to Asians in general, but also to other segments of the population. What I've heard also is how Westview has changed over time and accommodated. And I just saw in the chat that there was already a preparation potentially anticipating a crematory. So I see all the comments as the evolution of and expansion of end-of-life options that people have entertained over time and that continue to change, including green burials. So in my sense, this is another opportunity to look at the ability to take a known accessible footprint and expand it and make it restful and known and sort of reduce some or mitigate some of the grief and anxiety that I've seen in my time here as well. So I also note that we are seeing multi-generational families, so that we will see this as a more continuing issue, and also I think a way that people can stay connected with this town, which has been a very graceful place to live in. I'll stop my remarks here. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Niran. I appreciate those comments. We have one more person with their hand up, and that's Pam. I'll ask you to unmute yourself, and then we'll just have some quick closing remarks before we conclude. Pam?
Yeah, I just wanted to start out saying thank you for holding this and all the work that's gone into it. And I've been listening to both sides of the pros and cons on this. And I just wanted to bring up two, probably more questions than comments, but I mean, yeah. So one would be the medical issues that people have mentioned about that, you know, like people with heart devices or, you know, cancer treatments or fillings, how that impacts the health. And even with 2026, are we being equitable to the neighbors of Westview? Are we jeopardizing their health? That's a question. And then the other question I had was related to being fiscally responsible. And that was, sorry, if we're more expensive from what it looked like in the stuff I read, that we're more expensive than Mount Auburn, and we're not open on Sundays, are people still going to use the crematorium? So and those just my two questions. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for your input, Pam. And I just want to conclude by just saying thank you to everyone for all of your input. Your questions, comments, concern have been fantastic. What happens next is we will summarize all of this input. We will include it in our committee's report, which will be presented to the select board in coming weeks. And our goal is to provide that within the next several weeks, so that it can be considered in full over the course of the coming months. So I just want to thank everyone for your time this evening, for the excellent input, consideration of the community, and thank you for all the input that we've been able to gather. Hope you all have a great evening.